Good evening.
Good evening.
I hereby call this October the 8th meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. As always, before we begin, we'd like to thank all of our city employees for the work that you do to provide a quality service to our community. But particularly, I want to take a moment, as always, and recognize all of our public safety personnel. I want to start with the City Attorney's Office, led by Angela Carmen, our Public Safety Attorney, Attorney Lori Sykes. I'd like to recognize our Chief of Fire, Chief Trey Mayo. Thank you for being here today. I'd like to recognize our Director of Emergency Management, Mr. August Vernon. We thank you for being here today as well. And I'd like to recognize the Police Department, the brave men and women of the Police Department. And no disrespect to the Fire Department, you are brave, and we respect you as well. I'd like to recognize Chief Thompson, who I do not see, but representing the Police Department is Assistant Chief Wilson Weaver. Thank you for being here today as well. Members of the committee, there isn't a long meeting today. We have a few consent agenda items. There's one item on the general agenda recognizing the Winston-Salem Fire Department's rescue team, and I believe Chief Mayo may have another announcement. And then we have a resolution approving the guidelines for the successful outcomes after release or the SOAR program. Items on the consent agenda are unanimously approved with one sweeping motion unless a member of the council or the committee wishes one to be pulled for consideration. With that being said, members of the committee, are there any items should be pulled? And if there are none, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion for Councilmember McIntosh. Second? Second by Councilmember Larson. All in favor, please vote yes.
Yes. But Mr. Chairman, I wanted to say something. I noticed you were recognized, and it's just some people you were recognized as the head of things. When you said the attorney, you didn't mean all the attorneys who are here. There's Attorney Allen.
Let me back up here. Let's do this. We've got a vote on the floor. So let's vote on the consent agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Let's all in favor, please vote yes. Opposers likewise.
Mine didn't come up.
Okay.
Thank you.
The consent agenda is approved unanimously. So, anytime you start calling names,
yes,
you always make a mistake. So I'd like to recognize Attorney Al Andrews in the City Attorney's Office, all of our Assistant City Managers.
Yes.
We'll hear from some of them shortly. And the City Manager. Can't forget about you, sir, Mr. Lee Garrity. All right, so I don't have to fight my way out of here. We will now move on to the general agenda. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Yep.
Item G1, please.
Item G1, Winston-Salem Fire Department Rescue Team Recognition.
Thank you. Chief Mayo, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to you, Madam Mayor Pro Tem Burke, other members of the Council Committee.
Good afternoon.
I have 3 recognitions this afternoon, please, sir.
All well deserved. Take your time.
Before I do that, I would like to introduce to you Division Chief Darrell Sawyer. He's your highest ranking shift chief on shift tonight. And then Sharice Moore is also sitting here. She's one of the battalion chiefs working tonight. I always like to recognize those folks who are responsible for making decisions overnight. You know, there are 168 hours in a week, and senior staff's only here for 40 or 50 of them. So
yes, sir.
We depend on these folks to make decisions in our absence, and they do a great job, and we like to thank them for it. I'm going to call up the first recognition will be the Technical Rescue Competition Team. You've seen these guys in the past. This will be the 4th year that you've seen them. If I can get them to come up and bring their hardware with them. So the North Carolina Association of Rescue and EMS, they have an annual rescue competition, and teams from all over the state compete in that competition. And this is before y'all come on up, don't be shy. This is the 4th year in a row that they have come back with first place in the 6-person competition. And I've made it known, I'm not sure if I've told these guys, but I've told the training chief we're going to send them one more time next year. If they win it 5 times in a row, we're going to find something more challenging for them to do.
Exactly.
Following in 2020.
Well, that's a great place to retire. It's like the all-time greatest team ever.
Right. Go out with a championship.
There you go.
Mr. Chairman, you may remember in years past, so for 4 years in a row, we've won the 6-person championship and won second, third, and fourth. How many do they give? Second, third, and fourth? In the 2-person, and I've always been suspicious that there was something funny going on there, that we could win the 6-person but never could win the 2-person. And I assume this year they ran out of excuses. So this year They brought home not only the first place trophy in the 6-person competition, but also in the 2-person Helms Rescue
All right.
Challenge. So great diplomats for the city, and I'd like to ask that you recognize them, sir, and do as you so please.
But gentlemen, I think on behalf of the committee, and they want to speak, I just want to thank you for your service to the community. I am an extremely competitive guy. I feel like Al Bundy. I'm a former college football player, and I take this very seriously, but I like to know that I can pick up the phone and call 911, and good gentlemen like you and the women of the fire department will show up and rescue us. So thank you for what you do. Members of the committee, any comments at this time?
Well, first of all, I'd like to ask a question. Where was this competition held? In Hickory. And is it usually held there, or do we move it around?
About every 3 to 4 years, they move it to that state.
So we need to have it come here sometimes, since you guys win it all the time.
It's been here in time.
It was back in the 90s, so it's been a while since we hosted it. Well, congratulations. It's an incredible tribute to your skills and your dedication to your jobs and to the city. You make us really proud. Are we on? We are now. Thank you. It's skills.
You got to repeat
Teamwork.
We got
repeat all that.
teamwork. So, well, I'm just going to say that I'm sure that the amount of work that went into the preparation of this is years of not just getting ready for this one competition, but your day-to-day skill levels, and that reflects very highly on the whole department and the city. So thank you very much for what you've done.
Councilman McIntosh.
Congratulations. I love seeing you guys up here all the time. I'm just curious about maybe the names of some of the other cities that we beat. Who else did we compete against in as far as large towns? Not that I'm trying to rub it in or anything, but just okay.
A lot of county agency rescue squads
Yeah.
throughout the state, they participate. But as far as large cities, they, I guess, they didn't.
Great. Great work. Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Yes, I would like to say thanks so very much in behalf of the citizens for what you do on a daily basis.
All right, here, give him a round of applause. Thank you. Chief Mayo.
Thank you. So next, I'd like to call up the Swift Water team that deployed in the post-Florence days, Hurricane Florence. If you guys would come up, you'll see there's some overlap between those two teams. So so we have our water rescue program structured so that we have a type 1, we can deploy a type 1 team, that's a 14-person team, and then on any day of the year, we have 2 type 3 teams also available for, pool emergencies, somebody, some incident at Salem Lake, at the quarry, those sorts of things. So we got the 14-person type 1 team, they got activated on Wednesday night at 8 p.m. before the hurricane came ashore for service to Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. And then they deployed, so they were here from Wednesday night until Monday afternoon, and Assistant City Manager Duquesne and I stopped by Station 7, which is where they were housed for that period of time on Saturday night. And you talk about 14 bulldogs on a chain now. They were, I thought we were going to have to put them on suicide watch. They wanted to go badly. They sent every chief officer in the department to talk to me to try to get me to release them to go east, because that's the nature of this is how these guys are made up, is they see a problem and they have the skills and the tools to fix it, and they want to go. But I would not release them until I was certain that we were in the clear here. So they didn't get released until Monday afternoon, and then they were gone for a week. Their first stop was in Lillington, then they went to Pittsburgh, and then to Wilmington, and they did work clearing houses, getting people evacuated when they were forecasting waters to rise and cut people off from being able to get out of their homes. Their final tally was 31 human victims saved and 6 pets saved. So they did a remarkable job. And if I may, I've got 8 or 10 pictures here to show you. So this is our team. When you get down there, a lot of times they'll marry you with a team from somewhere else. So this is our team married with a Swiftwater or a USAR task force, Urban Search and Rescue Task Force from New Hampshire. Here's them on another day. These are our folks on the right, married with a USAR task force from New York. The Fire Department of New York, they're from the Fire Department of New York. Okay, Fire Department of New York and other agencies. Right, Fire Department of New York and New York PD, that's right. I have a video of this rescue right here. What you see here, I tell you, I'll just wait for the video. I think you'll be able to see it better there, what's going on here. And this is what it looks like. You just drive until you can't go any further, and you launch your boats, and you go to work from there. What highway is this? So this is all four lanes of 421 washed out. This is in Harnett County. This is in New Hanover County. So you can see the type of situation that they're still dealing with. They'll be dealing with these situations down there for years to come, getting all this infrastructure repaired. This, just a drone photograph, just to kind of show you what the situation was with some of these folks down there. This is after they had finished clearing a house. Again, just to show you the situation with the water. And I have a video of that rescue. This is from our Twitter feed. What happened here was there's a roadway there these guys to your right are standing on that washed out, and you'll see at the front of the raft there where a vehicle, that's the roof of a vehicle sticking out of the hole where the roadway had washed out. So there you can see the roof of that truck a little better there. So just a few examples of some of the things that they did while they were down there. I'm done.
Gentlemen, I can tell that you didn't really want to come in front of the camera, and it says to me that you have a truly humble spirit. But I'm glad that you did, because people need to see who you are and recognize you for the work that you've done. So truly, you bring honor to our city. We thank you for the service to our city, but this time we get to thank you for the service to the state of North Carolina. So please, if we can join in giving them another round of applause. Thank you. We have the best fire department in all of the United States of America, and this is just one of the other reasons why. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Councilmember McIntosh.
Before you guys go, I just want to say thank you. I've got a lot of family down eastern North Carolina. I've been down a couple of weekends now, and I know that when they see help coming from outside, I mean, they're working so hard, they can't see straight. So when they see help coming from the outside, they are really appreciative. And they had in Columbus County, Lake Walkmar area is where my folks are from, but they had National Guards troops come in. But it's so relieving just to get a respite from all that hard work that you're doing. And so thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks again. Chief Mayo.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman and Councilmember McIntosh, you bring up a good point. It is important that we be able to deploy our resources because that keeps them sharp. The more we can deploy them, the better they're going to be when we need them here. And it is important that we share these resources around the state, because at some point we're going to need help here. And we know that because we have done our part, we can get assistance from other municipalities. So good point. I appreciate both of you raising that.
Thank you.
So the final team we have is the Firefighter Combat Challenge team. If I can get those folks to come up. They've just come back from the regional competition at the Virginia State Fair, where, so how many, 5 of you go? So 5 went. Only 2 were able to come tonight. So coming back from there, they had the first place in the team competition. So the first place team, which means they take the 3 best scores from all the teams that were there. So that's sort of the most difficult thing to win, because it shows the strength of your individual team members. So that's what the big plaque there is the first place team plaque. So we're very proud of them for that. And then They also claimed second place in the tandem. That's a two-person event, and then third in the relay. So a good showing. And this is right off the Firefighter Combat Challenge website. And they were talking about the team competition. Winston-Salem's young team won today. So we're very pleased about the performance. And you remember, we've been bringing old guys in here, and they have sort of passed the baton off to some of these young guys to carry the torch, and they're making us proud. So I have a video of one. That's Chaz, captained by Chief Brown in here, running the course, if you'd like to see that. So this is a 42-pound hose pack up the steps. It's 44 feet 7 inches to the top rail. So this is Chief Browning on the blue side. This hose roll coming up, that's 42 pounds. There's a box on top. It has to go in a particular place. You can skip steps coming up, but you have to touch every one coming down. Then Chaz is going to come to a Kaiser sled. He's going to drive a 160-pound steel I-beam with a 9-pound shot mallet. It runs a slalom for 140 feet. This ain't my first time. This is a 75-foot hose advance pulling a charged 1 3/4 hand line. And then the last event is, this is a 175-pound mannequin. He's going to move it 106 feet. Toughest 2 minutes in sports, Mr.
You're here. Gentlemen, you make that look real easy. And, you know, I know the citizens feel safer knowing that you are on the streets. So thank you again for your service to the community. As you can see, and I know you'd agree with, winning is contagious. And we thank you for, you know, just putting in the time, the dedication, the hard work to win. And that says a lot about your character and your service to this community. Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Yes, I sure enjoyed listening to it. I want to say, though, we do have a little future leader sitting back there. Is he connected with you?
Yeah, really.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else wishes to be heard?
All I can say is I'm exhausted watching that go on. I went through obstacle courses in the Army, and I don't think we saw anything that rigorous, quite honestly, over that intense period of time. What period of time? How long did it take you to run that whole course? You have any idea?
My time was
A minute and 49 to run that whole course.
Our one team member that's not here, he ran it in 40, but he bested personal best by 9 seconds. So.
Wow.
Wow. Amazing. Good job, guys. Excellent.
I might need to come down to the 5 stations you're at and have dinner with you. Whatever you're eating is working. So thanks again. Can we give them a round of applause?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your time and you taking the time to recognize these folks.
Well, it was the right thing to do. Thank you, Chief, and we appreciate your service and the brave men and women of the Winston-Salem Fire Department. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Item G2, please.
G2, resolution approving guidelines for successful outcomes after release programs.
And I believe queuing this up for the presentation will be our Assistant City Manager, Mr. Evan Raleigh.
Good afternoon, Chairman Taylor, members of the committee.
Good afternoon.
Remember,
Good afternoon.
in January of this year, city staff brought an item before you, providing you with an update on successful outcomes after release program. And if you remember, at the end of that report, we shared with you all the good news and successes of the program, but we also offered up several recommendations for enhancing the program. So what you see in your council action is a list of those 6 specific items that were noted as areas that we were going to look at. And so we've provided you with a brief on our activities since the time of that update on each of those. And we are also bringing before you today an update on the overall guidelines, not just for our work experience program, but also for our grantee agency program. And with us this evening to provide you with that update is Ms. Regina Ford Hall and Ms. Patrice Tony. So at this time, I'll turn it over to them to provide you with an update.
And speaking to us now is our budget director, Ms. Patrice Tony.
Good evening, Chairman Taylor and members of the council.
Good evening.
As Evan mentioned, the guidelines, we've combined the guidelines for the work program and the grantee agency. And so the full guidelines are in your package. And what we'll do today, I'll do the grantee agency component. The budget office manages the application process. Pam Peoples-Joyner of the Winston-Salem Police Department handles support for the grantee agencies. And then Regina Hall will come up and talk about the work program. So to apply for SOAR funding, you have to be a nonprofit agency, of course, with the goal of easing the transition of previously incarcerated citizens, or if they address the needs of youth involved in the juvenile justice system. The agency can work on reducing recidivism or addressing some public safety issue. One key area is the funds and how the funds should be used in our new guidelines. The funds should be used for the provision of direct services or programming for the participants. Now, we do allow for funding to be used for staffing only if the staffing is doing direct services to an individual, such as counseling or mentoring to a youth. The agencies are also required to attend mandatory trainings and attend meetings throughout the grant period. This is to help with some capacity building, as well as just the agencies getting together, talking about their programs. Pam Peoples-Joyner will organize those trainings and meetings throughout the grant period. But this will be one requirement that's in the contract as well. For all agencies that receive city funding, this is the eligibility checklist. And so as we do our application process, all agencies will review the checklist, and we would like every area to be checked off. Of course, we provide support to the agencies if they're missing something, to tell them how to go about filing for a 990, for an example, and making sure they're 501c3 tax exempt. But if these checklist is not complete, their application cannot be moved forward for review. So if an agency applies for city funding through the SOAR program and they do not meet all of the eligibility, as you just saw, they can qualify for seed funding. And seed funding is for first-time applicants that do not meet the eligibility. The maximum amount is $5,000. They are required to attend a mandatory capacity building training through the funding cycle. And the seed funding is only available for up to 2 funding cycles. So after an agency has received seed funding for 2 funding cycles, we hope that they will have the capacity to apply for the full funding for city funds. This is a list of our dates for the application process for this fiscal year. Today, we actually released our request for proposals on the city's budget website. On Wednesday, we're doing an orientation workshop so that we can make sure all agencies are aware of the requirements on how to apply. We're doing an electronic version of the application this year, so we'll do quite a bit of training on that. As agencies start to apply online and have issues, we'll have a second technical workshop so that we can work either one-on-one with agencies and make sure that they have all the tools they need to apply for funding. And then the application deadline is on November the 16th. After that, there's a review panel. Then we have our Community Agency Allocation Committee that reviews all proposals. And then our normal budget process, which the adoption would happen in June of 2019.
Ms. Tony, before we move past this slide, the RFPs went out today, and I know we do have a mechanism for reaching out to nonprofits and community organizations who may not go directly to our website. So we do have a system where we go out and individually touch people, correct?
Absolutely. And we send postcards to let them know about our RFP process. We send emails. And so we make sure everyone is notified. And so then we also have a sign-in list at our orientation workshop. So agencies that don't attend, we make sure that we reach out so they are aware. And as I mentioned before, Pam Peoples-Joyner does a great job supporting the SOAR grantee agency. So they received funding previously. We make sure that they are definitely aware.
Just one more question, because I know somebody might be watching with a myriad of questions.
Mm-hmm.
In the event that someone wants to apply for SOAR grantee agency funding,
Yes.
they didn't go onto our website, they didn't get the postcard from the city, how might they best go about applying for funding or finding information on it?
Finding information. Well, it is all on the website at cityofws.org/budget, and the link is nonprofit funding to nonprofit organizations. So they can go there to find information out. They can call our budget office. They can call me directly at 336-747-7090. But they also can just show up at our technical workshop. It's going to be at the Maisie Woodruff Center at 2 o'clock on October the 10th. October 10th. So they can show up and hear about our process, the various funding sources, and get involved that way.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Okay. So after the agencies apply, there is a criteria for evaluating each application. This is primarily done by our Community Agency Allocations Committee, as well as a staff review panel that reviews all the applications. So points are awarded for organizational capacity, strategy, project approach and design, cost effectiveness, overall impression. If all the materials are submitted, they get 5 points, and everyone gets 5 points just for submitting an application. It's free 5 points. So the total potential score is 100 points for each application. So that's on the grantee agency side. And so the second portion, which Regina Hall will review, is the work experience program.
And Ms. Hall, as you take the podium, I just want to take a moment. I'd be remiss not to recognize Ms. Pam Peoples-Joyner, who works tirelessly with all those nonprofits and community organizations. So thank you for what you do in that regard, and we certainly appreciate you. Ms. Ford Hall.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrice. Thank you, Councilmember Taylor, Chairman of the committee, and all other members of council. Good evening. As previously stated, I am Regina Hall, and I do serve as the Reintegration and Youth Development Manager in the Office of Business Inclusion and Advancement. Tonight, I will be highlighting the areas of the SOAR Work Experience Program, but before I start, if I could exercise just a brief moment of personal privilege.
Oh, please do.
And acknowledge Mr. Troy Sneed, who actually works with the SOAR participants day in and day out. He, along with Faith Bartlett, but Troy actually serves as our administrative assistant for the program. So we appreciate all the work that he does and appreciate him for being here tonight. So I did want to acknowledge him. The work experience application is actually posted on the city's website. So anyone who's interested in the SOAR program can apply online at cityofws.org. And to be eligible for the program, all applicants must reside in Winston-Salem, have at least one prior conviction, must have completed a job training program or some sort of reentry program, or held at least 6 months of work experience since their last conviction. In addition, they must pass a drug test and consent to a background check, and also they must be able to work 32 hours a week. Applicants who meet eligibility criteria are invited to interview with a panel of city staff, and after successful completion of the interview, a background and drug screening, participants are assigned laborer positions with various city departments. Since January, we partnered with Winston Personnel Group to hire all of our SOAR participants. Our participants are paid the city's living wage at $11.25 an hour, and they do work 32 hours a week. Staff has expanded outreach and recruitment efforts for the program, including implementing something that we like to call Supersonic, and that stands for Strategic Outreach and Networking in Communities. We've partnered with neighborhoods and other community organizations to speak and set up displays at community days, job and resource fairs, and the Ministers Conference. We've set up displays at recreation centers during the summer months, and we also partnered with the Winston-Salem Police Department to place SOAR materials in over 1,600 book bags that were distributed throughout the community in August. During National Reentry Month in April, we hosted the inaugural Reentry Expo in partnership with the Forsyth Reentry Council. Councilmember Adams actually did bring remarks at the Haynes-Hosey Recreation Center, and we also were privileged to have a member from the North Carolina Attorney General's office who actually complimented our city on all of their reentry efforts. So that was really exciting to have them there. We do have some new partnerships to announce. Utility staff will actually conduct a labor employability skills session and an equipment training class with our current SOAR participants. That's going to take place next month in November, and both utilities and sanitation departments have agreed to have SOAR participants placed in their departments in our next cohort, which will begin in January. Staff has implemented monthly site visits to observe participants and site supervisors. Thank you, Patrice.
We were
I'm talking.
though.
Okay.
Okay.
Didn't even change the screen. Supervisors received a video training at the start of the cohort, including a list of frequently asked questions to address expectations of participants as well as site supervisors.
Ms. Ford Hall, if you can just give me a moment. Councilman Montgomery had a question a while back. I want to just pause and get him on the floor. You have the floor, Councilman Montgomery.
It was actually on the first slide that was up that referenced the qualifications for the program in terms of the 6 months prior work experience.
Yes.
Is that the existing standard today, or is this the proposed standard?
Existing.
That's the existing standard.
And it does not have to be consecutive. So if they worked 2 months here, let's just say at Burger King, and for whatever reason Burger King didn't work out, but they were able to get another job somewhere else or mowing grass or something like that. We just want to see that consistency of them being able to continue to seek employment.
All right, and I understand, and I guess it's been working in the program now, but I also know that part of that is a challenge of folks in terms of even being able to get that first opportunity. And for me, when we were looking at the program, the opportunity that this would allow for the work experience. It's called the Work Experience Program, but we want you to have work experience for the Work Experience Program. And so I know we want folks to show up, want to have that consistency that's there, and apparently it's been working with folks we have. But I just wonder, do we miss out on opportunities to engage folks because of that standard?
And we definitely might, and that's something that we can totally look into, especially if they have not completed a reentry program or a job training program. So I totally see your point there. And a lot of times what we get are folks who say that, well, I cut grass for a man in my neighborhood that has a lawn business, but they don't necessarily want to put that down on the application. But guess what? That's work experience, because they're getting up, they're going to work, and they're helping. So I can totally see your point. We can definitely revisit that, Councilmember.
So it's not necessarily what we may typically think as a job. There are other ways that we...
Exactly.
Okay.
And we try to explain that when we do go out to the community events and when we're speaking to people directly.
And part of the thing we're doing here today is adjusting and taking another look at our guidelines. I think Councilman Montgomery brings up a great point. Maybe we can revisit that and try to be a little bit more flexible. And I think the reason why that's important, the city has a focus on just sort of how we deal with poverty and how we promote moving the people in our community forward. And there are many people that are on many different levels. And one of the biggest catapults from going from poverty to success, whatever that means, is workforce programs like these. And, we've received commendations from all over the country, and I think that's a great point. There might be somebody who has been out, who has not been able to have the opportunities, but SOAR could possibly save them and help them moving forward. So maybe we can revisit that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, ma'am.
Staff has also developed an application and a starter packet for a coaching and mentoring program. The coaching program will be advertised to staff on the city's internal site, and anticipated implementation is January of 2019. I can interject here and say that we have actually had some organic mentoring relationships that have happened, and that has taken place with about 4 of our current participants. So we're actually really excited about that without having to truly advertise this program. So that's something that gives us hope for 2019. Also, staff developed posters, handbills, flyers, and business cards that are available in English and Spanish. We take those with them to all of our outreach events, and we actually got a retractable banner so that we can have a bigger display in events. So we're really excited about that. SOAR also has a website that includes a link to the interest form, and as of today, we have a total of 103 submissions of folks who are interested in the upcoming cohort that will start in January. We held an information session with the SOAR grantee agencies this spring, and we also attended the Neighborhood USA Conference. I went with Pam Peoples-Joyner in May, and we actually were able to learn a lot from other folks who have reentry efforts going on in their cities. What we did learn is that no one has a program quite like ours, so we're really excited about that. And folks now know about our program, Winston-Salem, on a national level. Our work experience staff continues to work with offices of performance and accountability, as well as budget and evaluation, to examine and expand all of our outcome-based measures. And just a few honorable mentions. We did have a SOAR participant in our current class who obtained his Class A CDL permit. He actually was hired as a full-time employee with the Utilities Department. And we just heard last week that he has already received a promotion to a crew leader, which is actually a supervisor role. So within the second month of the program, he was actually able to go on to receive full-time employment. His second week in the program, he received his Class A CDL permit, and now he actually is in a supervisor role. So we're really excited about that. And also, we did have a former SOAR participant that was selected to participate in the city's current career builder class. We've also had 4 promotions of former participants in 2018, 1 to city county planning. This was our first to get an actual office job, so we're happy for him. DOT, utilities, and fleet. And as of today at about 3 o'clock, I received an email from a current SOAR participant who received an offer letter to work full-time with Wake Forest Baptist Medical Center as a patient nutrition representative.
All right.
And last but not least, I do want to make sure that I give credit to the city of Winston-Salem for trailblazing in municipal reentry efforts across the state. According to staff with the North Carolina Attorney General's Office and the North Carolina Department of Public Safety, Winston-Salem is leading the way with municipal reentry efforts across the state with our Ban the Box policy, our grantee agency funding program, and our work experience program. There are cities that actually have maybe one of these components, but to actually have all 3 in place at one time is actually trailblazing for our city. So did want to make sure that you all knew that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And members of the committee, members of the council, we don't need to say anything else about SOAR. We see the work that it does. Just another really brief story. I think there was a young man who was a participant in the SOAR program. There was a car that was stolen. I think there was a young child in the back of the car. This gentleman was out doing his job. He found the little girl. He secured the little girl and ended up receiving a commendation from our Winston-Salem police chief for his work in the community. So if I asked everybody to raise their hand, I think there are many of us who have done something that we shouldn't have done. And I always say, by the grace of the good Lord, I just didn't get caught. But we want to provide opportunity. There are good people who are doing good work in this city, and it's incumbent upon us to give them an opportunity to shine, feed their families, to be successful. Because if we don't, you know what happens. So I think we have a responsibility to our friends, to our family, and to our neighbors here in this community. That's what the SOAR program is all about. Ms. Regina Ford Hall, thank you for the work that you do for the program. Mr. Sneed, thank you for the work that you do. Ms. Bartlett may be watching. We appreciate her as well. Mr. Riley, thank you for your leadership on the program. Is there anyone else who needs or wishes to be heard regarding SOAR? Councilman Montgomery is recognized.
Just a comment. You know, it was already stated in terms of the city being trailblazer in this efforts and these work, whether it's banning box, grantee agencies, work experience programs that exist. And it's one thing to talk about the issues of reentry and ensuring that people have the opportunity to join society, pay their time and their debt for something that they did wrong. It's one thing to talk about that. It's another thing to actually put things in place to ensure that we as a city of Winston-Salem decide that we will serve our entire population as a city. And for that, I would like to personally thank our chairman, Councilmember Taylor, for his dedication in ensuring that we begin to weave this through the fabric of who we are as city government as an example to others, that if we're going to talk about it as a city, then as a city we need to put a first good step forward to ensure that the policies and procedures are in place, and that if people talk about how it cannot be done in this city, that we as an example to the rest of the city of Winston-Salem can say we've done it. So to the chairman, I thank you for ensuring that this has been a part of the thread of what we do as a city of Winston-Salem.
So we have one motto in the city, and that's one team. I think whether you're in the fire department, police department, emergency management, I always say we're all building on the same wall in different places. Whether you're a janitor or whether you're the city manager, there is no one person more important than the other, because we couldn't all do our jobs without the other person. So I will finish my comments by recognizing Councilman Montgomery. It's my understanding that this will be his last committee meeting, and he will be moving on to other things in the General Assembly. Mr. Montgomery, we appreciate your service to public safety and your commitment to public safety, making sure that you've supported some of the raises and some of the things that we've done for equipment. Well, all of them. He wanted me to be specific. All of them. All right, but we thank you for what you've done. Thank you to the members of this committee for your commitment to public safety. Is there anything else that should be considered for the good of the order?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Councilmember Larson is recognized.
I do have an item that I would like to bring before the committee. In sitting and reading the newspaper this Sunday newspaper, I was reminded of an item that I am hearing a lot of concern about from the constituencies. And
hey, Councilmember Larson, I gave you the floor, but I need to take it back for a moment, so please forgive me. That was an action item and not a general information item, so it does require us to vote. So, members of the committee, I'd entertain a motion to approve the guidelines as presented to here today by Ms. Ford Hall.
Motion approved.
Have a motion
Second.
And a second. And Councilmember Burke has indicated that she's in favor, and I think she needed to leave. So all in favor, please vote yes. And that is unanimous. The guidelines have been approved. Thank you to all the SOAR staff. Councilman Larson, now you have our complete attention.
Thank you for taking care of general business. Well done. And congratulations to all the graduates of that program. I don't know if there are any in the room right now, but I was reminded of a problem that the city's facing. I've had several complaints. This action came in front of council, actually, I guess the Public Works Committee a month ago. I was reading in the newspaper about Nags Head eliminating electric scooters. And this brought to mind our continuing discussion of the continuing presence of electric scooters under the company Bird that is currently in the landscape of Winston-Salem. They've been here now for over, 5 weeks almost, I suppose. People are asking me, what are we doing about them? What is the plan? Why are they here? What authority are they operating under? And I don't have an answer for them. I think staff has been directed to provide some research on this matter. I know that other cities, such as Chapel Hill, have removed them, as well as Greensboro, I believe, has removed theirs. Some cities are grappling with it. I know we've applied to the state for some clarification as to what authority they have to put these vehicles or these units on public streets, and we'd have no answer back from that at present. I am bringing this to the Public Safety Committee because I feel it is a matter of public safety, particularly as these units are appearing on sidewalks and on streets night and day. There seems to be very little accountability for their placement on public sidewalks and or monitoring their use throughout the city. And what I'm requesting today, I guess, is further information and whether or not action would be appropriate to put a moratorium or a pause button on these units in the landscape of the city. In particular, I would ask of the city attorney at this point the legality of these units to be stored or placed on sidewalks in Winston-Salem. What is the legal status? And then secondly, what is the status of being able to operate them, not only store them, but operate them on sidewalks in the streets of Winston-Salem? Could you give us a legal opinion on this, please?
Attorney Coleman is recognized.
I'll be happy to. As I indicated to the General Government Committee, actually to the full council back in September, in terms of the sidewalk, I think there are a number of city code provisions, in particular 42-88, 74-20, and 42-286, that would preclude their operating on city sidewalks. And I also think there's a legal question as to whether or not they have the authority to operate on city streets. And I explained why. In particular, they're not segways, so they're not exempt from the requirement that you register with DMV and that you have insurance. They don't meet the definition of segways. There is a definition of moped, although I don't think it was a legislative intent for them to be characterized as mopeds. I know that Durham and Raleigh are looking at them as mopeds, but even with that characterization, they still have to be registered with DMV and have insurance, which heretofore they don't. So, in my opinion, they're not authorized to be on city sidewalks and they're not authorized to be on city streets. Now, what does that mean in terms of options for the city? Certainly the city can have all of them removed, put a moratorium on them, demand that they be removed from the city streets and sidewalks until an opinion is issued by the AG's office saying that they can, in fact, operate on city streets, either with registration with DMV and insurance, or they're not required to have either. Or the General Assembly changes the statute to basically include a new definition to cover this technology that exempts them in the same manner that segways are exempted. So it's up to council to decide. I know a question was raised of me in terms of whether or not the council decides to do nothing. There is liability for the city. I think, again, as I indicated earlier, that to the extent the city gets sued, you have defenses such as governmental immunity and other defenses, other immunities that I think would preclude the city from basically being found liable.
So we could claim immunity, but it wouldn't exactly be the moral high ground, would it?
I think that's up to you all.
That's an opinion as to whether it's a matter. So there is a law in place. Could you address any issues dealing with the storage or the placement of these units? Even if we say you can't ride them on the sidewalks and you can't ride them on the streets, are they legally stored on the sidewalks of the city, where we see them parked continually? Or is that a legal placement? I know that we have authorized, bicycle racks, and we've authorized food vendors. We've licensed a variety of agencies to. These are profit money-making organizations that are using city property for their personal gain of a business, whether they be selling food or what have you on city property. As far as I know, do we have any other examples of people storing inventory for product for sale or rent on city property that was not licensed by the city or monitored or controlled by the city in some way or another?
I'm not aware of any beyond those that I mentioned in my memo.
Yeah.
So, again, because arguably under the city code provisions that I just mentioned, they're not authorized to be on the sidewalk. To me, if they're not authorized to be on the sidewalk, they're not authorized to be stored on the sidewalk.
Okay. Do we know at this point, I know this thing is being discussed nationally. You just go Google it and you can see different cities grappling with it. Can we say the general tenor so far is one of trying to navigate through an area that is not well defined by law, state law, or federal law, or anything at this point? We're all sort of struggling with this.
I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah. And so the question is what most cities, and many cities have done anyway, even larger cities than ours, have chosen to do a pause on the distribution and use of these things on the streets and sidewalks, pending a couple of things. One, legal clarification of their status as a vehicle, and then two, how the city is to embrace them as a transportation alternative. And I certainly think there's merits to be looked at as to using a variety of transportation alternatives in the city, and I think we would welcome that. However, I think they do have to work within the constraints of some guidelines which are currently not in place. The development of those guidelines, other cities I think are grappling with that as well, but at this point I don't think they're clearly defined, and I don't know that we're prepared, you're prepared, any staff is prepared. I'd be interested to hear from staff about what recommendations would be made to accommodate these vehicles safely, either on the sidewalks or the streets of Winston-Salem, and assuming they could even be made legal. So we're sort of in a quandary here, and my recommendation, I suppose, at this point is to consider a pause in the distribution and operation of these pending some guidance from the state, and more importantly, preparing and defining a program that would allow us to operate them legally, safely, coordinated, placed properly within the city landscape as we do for other vendors and operators that work within this city. And so I'd be curious to know, I mean, my information is largely anecdotal from information that I've gotten from institutions and private individuals who have complained to me. I don't know whether it does present a major hazard, as it were, to pedestrians or an encumbrance. It certainly has a strong visibility in the streets of Winston-Salem. And I see somebody from the bike patrol here today. Perhaps you would comment as far as downtown goes, whether this has had any impact or not.
Councilman Larson, what I want to do, and I'm going to recognize you, Madam City Attorney, and sir, as you come up to give information about the bike patrol, what I don't want to do is belabor the hour, because this item was not on the agenda, but we do have the authority as a public safety committee to request that information be brought to this committee for consideration. We can look at how we might be able to, for lack of a better term, regulate these particular scooters. We might can look at a system where we can put out an RFP. I heard that Bird may not be the only player in the game. I've heard of Bird cages. So there are many other options that we can evaluate and consider. But what I don't want to do is have the discussion today. It's cool to introduce the idea and the concept, but we just don't want to belabor the hour. So we recognize the city attorney, and then, sir, if you would just come up, and the city attorney, if you would just make your comments, we'll move to adjourn here shortly.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. I want to make one clarifying point. With respect to the AG's opinion, the city of Charlotte, of course, contacted me and asked if the city of Winston-Salem was willing to join in that request for an opinion. So they're in the process of drafting it. They haven't actually sent it yet. I just wanted to make that known.
Okay.
Can I make
Councilman McIntosh, yes.
At the community development meeting, staff gave a presentation that I thought was very thorough, and I still haven't heard any other topic sort of out in the world of discussion about this that wasn't covered by staff in that report, or that initial report. So we're due to get that information back. We have not gotten that information back. I'm not going to make any motion towards anything until we know the answers to those questions that were posed, because I think staff did an excellent job of identifying the particular issues that we're all talking about. So I think it's premature until we hear that.
Given it to November.
Public Works, I'm sorry.
Works.
Public Works.
I think we're given to November.
November is coming back. Okay.
Sir, if you introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good evening, Sergeant Kevin Bowers, Winston-Salem Police Department, Downtown Bike Patrol.
Sergeant Bowers.
So far, there's been numerous warnings given out by members of the Downtown Bike Patrol, and numerous, I would say, for me, over 50, probably closer to 100 in the last several weeks.
These are warnings or citations?
These are warnings.
Okay.
By whether me talking to somebody out on foot that I come into contact with, or where I observe somebody near my vehicle. If I'm in my vehicle, I'm able to get on my loudspeaker because they're going by, to get their attention, tell them to get off the sidewalk, that they're supposed to be for the roadway, like a vehicle, or if we're out on our bicycles, and then stopping individuals that are riding them on the sidewalks or riding them on the wrong way on one-way streets. and making sure that they're also stopping for traffic lights, for red lights. There's been a number of them to run red lights. But as far as I know, nobody on bike patrol has issued any citations yet.
So based on the information we've heard from Sergeant Bowers, typically, Mr. Montgomery, Public Works would deal with sort of streets and sidewalks. I believe that based on the number of citations that I've heard issued, that this is probably a public safety issue that we need to continue to discuss. So I thank you for bringing it up, Councilman Larson. Do you have any particular recommendations?
I would, for like Zaxter with the bicycles, where they have stations. There's one alongside where Embassy Suites is on the 400 block of North Cherry Street. There's also one down by Bailey Park. There's one on the 600 block of West 4th Street, across the street from Foothills Brewery. And they're, central locations, if you want to call that, but they're, one location, it looks cleaner. They're not blocking somebody that's trying to get out of a car, because there's been several instances where if a passenger's trying to get out of a car where there's parallel parking,
right,
they can't get out because there are 2, 3, 4 that are lined up there that nobody would be able to get out of a car as well. So I think that would be a main point on that. They're also being placed in front of the cutouts for crosswalks. And so folks that are trying to enter crosswalks, they can't get in there. There's 2 and 3 that have been, blocking that section of the crosswalk for somebody to get across the roadway in a timely manner.
And I had a friend who shared some information with me that I then sent to the Public Works Committee. I mentioned cages. It's sort of little small parking spaces for the scooters, which could be designated locations, which could help us to address this. I just think we need some time to pull all the information together. And so we appreciate you coming to speak to the committee. Now I have a true understanding of the seriousness of the issue. I will then move to recognize Councilman Montgomery. We'll give Councilmember Larson the last word on the issue, and then we'll take this back up. Now, we do have another public safety meeting in October, correct?
No.
The next one is November?
November.
We can take this up in our November meeting. And are you fine with that, Councilman Larson, before I recognize Mr. Montgomery?
Please recognize Mr. Montgomery.
So you're not fine with it. We'll come back to
I'll
you.
make a final comment.
Councilmember Montgomery.
Oh, well, just a quick comment. One, I echo Councilman McIntosh's sentiments in the sense that there was a very good presentation done to talk about issues, what we're facing, and then information to be gathered back around about it. And as you stated, you all bring something back and have a bit more dialogue about what is to happen with it. Part of my challenge, some of this is that it becomes a little challenging, I think, in terms of when you start getting to the nitty-gritty of some of the components, in terms of how do you truly decipher between one style of motorized vehicle that we allow and then another style that we don't allow. For the same standard applied, if everyone dropped segways down and segways were free to ride in the same manner, those are then legal on the street, but I think you'd have the same concern that you would have today, but it's just a style in terms of what exists and what is of more use. Zaxter, I think, is one of the things. They want to do the same thing. They're interested in terms of being able to have the dock, to have the same kind of system in place in different ways. And then you also have, which is becoming more prevalent, is that even on bicycles, that you have motorized bicycles, and bicycles currently have the ability to be ridden on sidewalks in certain places and not. And so when we start getting down into some of these things, it's just an interesting pool of mud it can become. And I'll leave it at that. For
me, if one person gets hit in the middle of the street on the sidewalk, and we haven't done our due diligence, and I think we failed the people of this community. So as healthy of a debate that we need to have, I think we're all prepared to have it. Councilmember Larson is recognized for the final time.
Yeah, I am obviously anxious for us to bring resolution. I would be happy to embrace electric scooters in this community. I've always said that. I am not happy with the way this thing is dragging out when we are basically having a problem on the streets of Winston-Salem and we have not addressed it. We can put a pause on this thing and we can immediately go into consultation and find resolutions. There are other companies besides Bird that probably need to be consulted in the matter and find a overall resolution to it. But as long as we continue to have discussions about it and we continue to have one single company basically using city property for their own personal gain, and at the hazards of the citizens of Winston-Salem, I continue to have a problem with that. They are illegal. That's the bottom line. They are illegal. They're illegally placed. They're illegally operated. And the question is whether this city is going to enforce its laws. That's where I am on the thing. And then we can figure out a way to legalize them. But for right now, we're operating illegally, and we seemingly are comfortable with that. I'm not. And I hope that we can find a resolution quickly to embrace these, but not the way we're going right now. This is what disappoints me most about this. Thank you.
And as this item comes back, Madam City Attorney, to committee, maybe we can add an option on the agenda just for an up or down vote, whether we want to pause until we're able to sort of work this thing through, or whether we want to continue as we are operating at this time. I think Councilman Larson brings up a great point, and I just request an up or down vote from the committee.
We're bringing it back, public safety and public.
At this time, the answer is yes. Anything else on this item?
But just the likelihood that because you have so many cities and towns with the issue, I do believe that we'll probably hear something from the state in some legislative manner.
Well, you'll be in Raleigh in November. Hopefully you'll take it and run the ball for us. All right, is there anything else that should be considered for the good of the order? Seeing nothing further, I hereby consider this Public Safety Committee meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.